Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and today I'm going to show you how to make some prank food. I don't know about you guys, but here in Canada we don't have In-N-Out. But have no fear, because I'm going to help you guys make cake that looks exactly like an In-N-Out burger, or what I imagine an In-N-Out burger looks like. I think I've only eaten one like maybe 2 times in my life. So let's get into the video.
Using an edible pen, trace a circular cookie cutter. You're going to use this to measure your buns and the meat. In ordinary circumstances, I would most likely have baked a full cake for this and then carved it out. But because I had some leftover cupcakes from one of my old tutorials, I am using it to make a cake pop version of the bun. The cake I used is very, very moist, so I actually didn't have to add much buttercream to it at all. Make sure your bottom bun is very flat, and make sure your top bun is nice and spherical on top. Ordinarily, I would say you need to re-whip your Swiss meringue buttercream before using it for a crumb coat, but since this cake is really only going to be for me to look at, I just went straight for it without any whipping. I also want to note that I'm using a very, very tiny spatula. The big one would have been way too difficult to maneuver. Because the bun is curved, I'm using this plastic thing. I'm really not sure what it's called, but it's very, very useful for helping me scrape off some of the buttercream on curved edges and smoothing it out. It's imperative that you have a really nice, solid buttercream coat, because if you don't, when you put the fondant on, you're going to see all those little imperfections if you didn't make it smooth enough. Both of those buns need to sit in the fridge for at least an hour. Here I'm using some Satin Ice Fondant to mix up the color for the burger patty. Now this is a little bit of a strange tip for this, but I actually tried to find some really dried out fondant and then mix it with some smoother, newer fondant. This helps create those little fatty pieces that you can usually see if you look at a burger patty up close. You also saw that I ripped up all those pieces of fondant and then I mushed it back together like you would with ground beef, making a real hamburger patty. Now I'm starting on the tomatoes, which really is just a thick circle, and then I cut them in half because not much of the tomato is going to be showing. Now I'm making the onion, and for this color I added a little touch of gray to it. The reason being is that onions are kind Whenever you're adding gel food coloring to your fondant, it really makes it super sticky, so you do need to add a little bit of cornstarch in order to counteract that. I'm using my balling tool to brush out the leaves and really making them thin. I'm also pressing them back into each other so they get a little bit curly. The bun color was really challenging to make because I only had this grayish fondant left over from another cake that I did, so I had to counteract it with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of brown, but the balance between finding the right bun color was really, really difficult. Eventually, I got it. If you've never put fondant on a cake before, I suggest you start with something really small like this because it's super, super easy to do. As you saw, I laid down a bunch of cornstarch and then I rolled it out kind of thin, and then I placed it directly on the cake. No fear here. Say cheese! A little side note that these scrapers are perfect for cutting straight lines that are nice and small. As you finish each element, make sure you put it on a parchment-lined tray. With my airbrush, the general rule of thumb that I followed was airbrushing just the ends of things a slight touch darker than what their original color was. I've mentioned this in a previous video before, where sometimes your airbrush can be really, really hard to maintain. I was having a giant issue with trying to airbrush this bun in the first place. Finally, I got it right. My brown airbrush color was just not working properly and it kept clogging everything. So I used the edible gel coloring that I really actually wanted on the bun and mixed it with a ton of vodka. Luckily this worked, but sometimes if you don't put enough vodka into the machine, it clogs it for a really long time and it takes forever to get it unclogged. When airbrushing the buns, you want a really gentle hand with it, and make sure that you're aiming the brown at the bottom of the bun and just at the top of the bun so it kisses it. Time for the in and out spread. I'm looking at this picture and trying to figure out what colors are going to go best, so I chose orange and brown. I did make it a little bit dark, so I had to reincorporate some white food coloring in there. This is just some royal icing that I've thinned out a bit. Assembly time! So with the exception of the layer of tomatoes, everything else was put on with a little dab of water. At first I thought I was going to make the burger be seen by all angles, but then I decided that I was going to just direct most of my toppings towards the front because I'm going to put a wrapper on later. Don't worry, I know that meat color is a little bit off and we're gonna go back and paint it later. If I were to go back and redo this again, I would actually cut those cheese slices a little bit closer to assembly time so that I could actually have that cheese fall over the edge of the meat as if it were melting. If you're going to be transporting this cake, I would suggest that you put large toothpicks right down the center of the hamburger, maybe 2 or 3, just so that it's super stable. With the exception of the toothpicks, I wanted to keep this 100% edible, so I'm using rice paper as the wrapper. Scrape off any impurities or messy bits that you feel don't belong on your cake. For these fries, I made some yellow fondant and I just patted it down and then cut it with that scraper that I showed you earlier. Use a really gentle hand and almost a dry brush to brush a little bit of brown food coloring on the ends and sides of your fries. For assembly of the fries, I'm just using a little bit of water to adhere them together. This is a little trick I learned and I really don't do it often because I often find that it takes way more time than it's worth. But if you don't like to freehand things like I do, then I'm showing you this easy trick. You get your cell phone or a tablet or anything else that has a lit screen and put a piece of parchment over top of the image that you would like to create. And then, voila, you just pipe over top. My need to conserve piping bags is kind of why this logo right now is pink and white. And trust me, I regret it later because I end up having to hand paint the whole thing, which takes forever. While that's in the dehydrator for about 10 minutes, I am steaming the rest of my cake, and I want to be Although I am thrilled with the end result, I cannot tell you how much I am craving one of these real burgers right now.
How amazing is this? I feel like I could serve this to my dad and he could actually get through a few bites before he realized it wasn't a hamburger. It was so much fun to make. I hope you guys are inspired to make your own food cakes. I know they're all the rage right now and cutting into food cakes is really, really fun. Now inside, because we used a lot of fondant and only really the buns are cakes, I'm not going to cut into it. I want to save it a little bit longer, and I want to just marvel and look at it. But no, I'm really, really proud of this cake, and I hope that you guys have a great April Fool's Day. And remember to get your pranks in by 12, because it doesn't count if you do it after then, which is great since I've uploaded this at 6 o'clock p.m. You know what? Forget that. Go ahead, prank your friends, prank your family, and I hope you enjoy caking.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you know when I upload, which right now is happening at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time daily.